Hey y'all, we're going to look at Mark chapter 3, starting at verse 20. This is when Jesus is accused of casting out demons by demons. Then he went home, and the crowd gathered again so that they could not eat. And when his family heard it, they went out to seize him, for they were saying, "He is out of his mind." And the scribes who came down from Jerusalem were saying, "He is possessed by Beelzebul, and by the prince of demons he casts out demons." And he called them to him, and said to them in parables, "How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. And if Satan has risen up against himself and is divided, he cannot stand, but is coming to an end. But no one can enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man. Then indeed he may plunder his house. Truly I say to you, all sins will be forgiven the children of man, and whatever blasphemies they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit never has forgiveness, but is guilty of an eternal sin. For they were saying, he has an unclean spirit." So, lots going on here for the Gospel of Mark. First, I do want to point out that this is one of those cases where there's what people have called sandwiches that Mark makes. And the sandwiches that there's a story about Jesus' family where they misunderstand him. They think he's out of his mind and they come to literally take hold of him. And then later on, the family is standing outside. This is in the verses after. Pieces of bread are the family thinking he's out of his mind. And then the family standing outside wanting to see him. The meat, or the middle of the sandwich, is the story with the Pharisees accusing him of having a demon. And so those two stories on either side are kind of commenting on the central story, which is the Jewish leadership's opposition to Jesus. And again, when we look at the next passage, we see that the right response is to sit at Jesus' feet and listen to his teaching. But we need to comment on this thing about them saying that Jesus is casting out a demon by a demon, or by the prince of demons. Essentially, they accuse him of idolatry. In the book of Kings, there's a story of one king consulting an idol, Beelzebub. And essentially, they're saying Jesus is an idolater. But we need to connect this to the larger theme in Mark of Jesus casting out demons. If you look through the whole story thus far, that's one of the hallmarks of what Jesus is doing, is he is repeatedly casting out demons, and he sees these evil spiritual forces as one of the central problems of humans. You know, in our modern time, we usually think that our problems are other people, or ourselves, or our genes, but the Bible in general, and Mark in particular, want to remind us that there are these intelligent spirits with designs to destroy us, and that the human race, their problem is listening to the voices of those spirits, and allowing them to control their lives. And so Jesus has come, and here's what's interesting. He tells this parable about a strong man. You don't steal a strong man's goods until you tie up the strong man. Well, look at what Jesus is doing. He's going around and with a word, silencing demons, casting demons out, telling demons to shut up. Jesus has this great authority. He says, look, the human race is enslaved to a strong man, which is Satan. And Satan's happy for them to not even know he exists or believe he doesn't exist. But Jesus is showing up and he's revealing the deep underlying problem of humanity: slavery to sin, slavery to these forces that control the human race. And he is coming to just trounce them. And he doesn't even do it. He does it with one arm tied behind his back, if you will. And so what the Gospel of Mark is telling us is this story of a kind of a greater exodus, where instead of Pharaoh we have Satan, and instead of Moses we have Jesus. And Moses is trouncing all of these opponents that enslave the people of God and leading them into liberty. And that's why we get this statement that seems so strong, that you can blaspheme Jesus, the Son of Man, but you can't blaspheme the Holy Spirit and be forgiven. What does this mean? A lot of people tend to think this means there's this sort of magical set of words that if you say them, once you say them, you can never be forgiven. That's not what the gospel's about. That's not what Mark is saying. the simplest way to put it is this: Jesus is coming, bringing deliverance to the human race. And these leaders of the people of God are saying that he has a demon. They are resisting the very means by which they could be set free. So the great irony is they are idolaters. They are in sway to these dark powers, and they're accusing the one who could set them free of being possessed by this very same dark powers. So I think what Jesus is saying here is, as long as you resist what the Holy Spirit is doing to set people free from darkness through the church, you cannot be forgiven. But if you will open yourself up to that deliverance that comes through the power of Jesus Christ in his people by the Holy Spirit, then you can be forgiven and you can be set free from those powers. So may we be a people who are increasingly being liberated from the powers of darkness by our new David, by our new Moses, who is defeating all of the forces that enslave the people of God. Amen.